there is a cut scene from It Chapter 1 that is absolutely horrific. However, there's another scene from It Chapter 2 that would have completely changed Welcome to Derry. It would have changed everything we know about Mike and his character, and it would have changed a lot about what we understand about Pennywise in the original 2 films. So join me as we take a look at Pennywise and his terrible, terrible actions in It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. So the most infamous of the two happens in It Chapter 1. A woman named Abigail rushes into the Neibolt house, or interestingly enough, in the script it's written as the Well House, which is the other name for it. Either way, she runs into the house holding a baby. She kneels by the fire as her baby begins to cry. Above her, she slowly sees the chandelier start to spin. She hears something almost slithering in the shadows by the well, and we see a silhouette changing shape. He reveals himself as half Pennywise, not fully, and every time the light spins and hits his face, it's a different shape. A woman, a man, a monster, a beast, every single time. The lady is crying because she's praying for the devil to escape and not attack her and her baby. That's when Pennywise tells Abigail that he's not the devil, but the Eater of Worlds. At this point, the baby is still just crying in fear. That's when Pennywise offers Abigail a terrifying proposal. If she gives him her baby and stares into the fire, she and the rest of her family would be saved. However, Pennywise would eat her baby. She unfortunately accepts, and she turns away from the baby and stares into the dying ember of the now barely lit fire. We hear her baby crying, and over the shoulder of her, out of focus, we see Pennywise crawl towards the baby on the floor, lift open his jaw, and with one last piercing scream, cut short by Pennywise crunching, and that's the last time we hear the baby. Abigail continues to look into the fire. Suddenly, the embers start to glow brighter and more orange. They're not flames anymore though. The deadlights. Fear, denial, grief, acceptance. Nothing. She stares into nothing. She's not there anymore. It's just the deadlights. That was my dramatic reading of how, the scene is written in the book, and I changed it to make it flow better story-wise. But I think that would have been absolutely horrific, but I think it wouldn't have been the same film. I don't think audiences would have watched that scene the same way and appreciated the whole movie because of part of that scene. I think it was just a tad much, at least for the tone of the rest of the film. If the rest of the film had kind of upped its tone a little bit, I think that would have worked, but I think the way that it is now doesn't work the same way. I think it ultimately would have changed our understanding of Pennywise, especially in that first film. In this film, doesn't seem to be missing any big key plots or key points that could have needed this kind of scene. The Neibolt house reveal works perfectly fine, and it works perfectly well for that first film. However, what I think is fascinating is a big plot that was removed from It Chapter 2 that Welcome to Derry just completely stole. In It Chapter 2, the biggest plot of the story is Mike asking everyone to come back to Derry, just like happens in the book, therefore kind of reuniting the Losers Club. Then, everyone in the Losers Club has to basically find artifacts from their time at Derry to help them remember Derry and kind of what happened to them when they were children. This movie originally was not gonna go that way, kind of. In the shooting script for this film, which is the most important script, since we were obviously following Mike, going with whatever he says and following him into the sewers, towards the end of the film, we are agreeing with him and going to do whatever he says because we trust him and he knows what to do. Well, in this cut version of the film, we originally were going to go down into the sewers and actually see Mike's body laying on the ground, which was when Pennywise was going to reveal to the rest of the Losers Club that the Mike that they had been following around the entire movie was actually not Mike, and it was actually Pennywise in a different form. And he was getting all of the rest of the Losers Club to actually do Pennywise's bidding. This would have been a crazy twist to that story, and I don't think that storyline really works in It Chapter 2. I think it would have been too far of a change from the story in It Chapter, like in the book, that I don't think it would have worked very well. However, the only reason it actually didn't happen, because of someone named Jordan Fuchs, who was hired on set to be the set writer and rewrite anything that needed to be written on set. Here's his quote read by me. So when I was working on It Chapter 2, there was a version of that script where Mike Hanlon, who obviously had been guiding our adult losers the entire time, eventually takes them down into the sewers, takes them down into its sanctuary, where they find Mike Hanlon's body. And you realize that the Mike Hanlon we were with the whole journey of It Chapter 2 was a manifestation of it. We thought, oh, it's just too much of a departure from the book. We want to be closer to where the story beats. and so that went away. In my opinion, this was definitely for the best. The ending that we got from this wouldn't have worked very well and would have been so far from the book and such a change that I think it would leave a lot of fans disappointed. We didn't get the giant turtle in It Chapter 2. We didn't get that side of It, but I think this would have been too far of a change that I don't think most fans would have been happy about it. However, this is where it gets really interesting in my opinion. If you've seen Welcome to Derry, which is a great show, and a prequel to the 2 movies that we're talking about today, spoiler alert really quick, spoiler alert for Welcome to Derry, but that show features this exact thing happen, which is kind of cool that they actually got to use that plot in Welcome to Derry, and it works really well, which I think is really cool, and I think it's actually kind of awesome that they got to use a story that they kind of wanted to tell but weren't able to. So here's what kind of happens. So a kid dies relatively early on in the show, and towards the latter half of the show, that kid actually ends up coming back, and actually ends up being a version of Pennywise that is only there to lure the kids into a false sense of security, to lure them into the sewer so we can kill them. That whole sequence is very, very intense with the way that he changes into Pennywise. It's very scary looking, and I think it really works really well, and I think it worked better in Welcome to Derry than it could have even if they had tried in It Chapter 2. What do you think? Are you happy with the fact that they cut these out, or would you rather them have kept every single story beat in place? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to, you can follow us on Instagram, it's @MediaByteCompany, and TikTok is @MediaByteCo. If you'd like to, you can listen to all of the podcasts on the MediaByte Podcast Network, Diary of an Indie Filmmaker, Slash It, and Exploring Cinema. Please listen to all of them. They're available on all of your favorite podcasting apps. Rate, review all of them. If you want to go listen to them, that would mean everything to me. Really trying to get some stuff off the ground, and it would honestly mean the world to me if you could help out with that. If you like any of those sound interesting, Diary of an Indie Filmmaker is all things filmmaking, Slash It is all things horror, and Exploring Cinema I do with my wife Alex, and we have a great time. We joke, we have fun, and it's just kind of a grand old time. So if that is anything that sounds interesting to you, please let me know. I would really appreciate it. Yeah, so if you're interested, Patreon has commentaries, ad-free podcasts, and a bunch of other cool and interesting content. $5 a month, all at patreon.com/MediaByte. Patreon.com/MediaByte. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.